During our break, Mr. President, last Thursday, the New York Times ran a story that was as heart-wrenching and gut-wrenching as I've read in a long time. The headline was, "1 week in April, 4 toddlers shot and killed themselves." And I asked that it be included in the record if there's no objection.
Without objection.
It included harrowing stories like this one, and I'm quoting, "Shaquille Cornegay, 2 years old, was buried in a pink coffin, her favorite doll by her side, and tiara strategically placed to hide self-inflicted wounds, gunshot wounds to her forehead. She had been napping in bed with her father late last month when she discovered the 9mm handgun he often kept under his pillow in his Kansas City, Missouri home. It was equipped with a laser sight that lit up like red lights on her cousin's sneakers. Her father told the police he woke to see Shaquille by his bed, bleeding and crying. The gun at her feet, a bullet had pierced her skull." On the night of April 20th, Carnisha Shelton had placed her purse out of her 2-year-old son Cayenne's reach on the kitchen counter. But when her phone started ringing, the boy apparently pushed a chair close to the counter, climbed onto it, and reached for the purse. There was also a .380 caliber Beretta pistol in it. Just after 9 p.m., Ms. Shelton heard a loud bang and rushed downstairs. There, in the kitchen, she found Cayenne lying on the floor, bleeding from a gunshot wound to the chest. The police in Indianapolis said such scenes were becoming more common. As someone who has advocated for common sense protections against gun violence for decades, and now as senator from Connecticut, where we know all too well the horrors of gun violence and the deep wounds and death they can wreak on innocent children, and especially as a parent of 4 children who have been those ages, these stories, for me, are truly heart-rending and gut-wrenching. My heart goes out to the families of these children and the families of countless other children who are lost as a result of these gun deaths. Too many such families, too often, so many of them preventable. Last year, there were 278 unintentional shootings by young children or teenagers, most of them having no idea what they were doing. In the week at the end of this April, when 4 toddlers shot themselves, at least 5 other children and teenagers accidentally shot themselves or other people. And in-depth investigations have strongly suggested that these shootings are significantly undercounted because of differing rules across the country and jurisdictions about how such deaths are to be reported. Some areas designate any death in which one person shoots another as a homicide, even if the shooter is 2 years old and has no intent to kill. The gun lobby relies on these misleading statistics to oppose laws that could reduce and prevent these kinds of heart-wrenching stories and deaths. Safe storage laws or technology or trigger locks. How could they be opposed? The gun lobby argues that these deaths are vanishingly rare, outpaced by other causes of child mortality. And of course, they perpetuate the misinformation by continuing to oppose any research, any fact-finding into gun violence by the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, continuing even to block our ability to better understand the problem, let alone address it. I continue to have great difficulty understanding the anti-safety advocacy of these groups. Time and again in American history, We have recognized that products posing a risk to consumers, particularly to children, require regulation to make them as safe as possible, no matter what the product, no matter what the industry. That's been the American way. We put seatbelts in cars and require drivers to learn what they're doing and obtain a license. We put child-proof caps on medicine bottles and dangerous household products, even if they have the best of uses. If we've taken concrete steps to ensure that children can't open a bottle of aspirin, I'm baffled that we can't do more to prevent these violent deaths. Why aren't we doing everything we can to make sure that children can't kill themselves or others, or injure themselves or others with a firearm? There is no lack of ideas for how to remedy this situation. President Obama recently announced that as part of the White House's anti-gun violence initiative, he'll move forward to promote the development of smart gun technology, which is designed to ensure that no one except the owner can fire it. Even if a gun makes it into the hands of someone who should not have it, whether a child or a criminal, the gun will not be accessible. Like other steps the President has outlined, in the absence of congressional action, which remains sorely needed, this Smart Gun Initiative utilizes existing laws and resources to channel research, innovation, and enforcement toward more effectively cutting down on gun violence. Surely we have a consensus among the American people, among gun owners, among anybody belonging to groups that seemingly oppose these common sense measures, that we need to do more and do it better to prevent these child deaths. On smart guns in particular, the White House will provide guidance for enhancing safety technology, help to manufacture and test smart firearms, and facilitate their purchase by state and local governments. Working in partnership with private sector innovators and local jurisdictions, this initiative holds tremendous promise. Even while smart guns that depend on advanced technology are being developed, existing mechanisms provide remedies as well. Low-tech remedies, trigger locks, and indicators of whether a gun is loaded are in widespread use today. Studies have suggested that a third of accidental deaths could be prevented by the use of child-proof safety locks and a loading indicator, and our laws should encourage and even require their adoption. States around the country have also developed a variety of safe storage bills, which prohibit storing firearms in places that are accessible to children. Tragic experience has shown us that as important as it is for families to discuss guns with their children, simply admonishing them to avoid going near guns simply won't work, particularly when the children are too young to understand what guns are, what they can do, and most especially when they are playing with other children in other families' homes where those guns may be accessible and loaded. The answer is to insist that adults take responsibility. They need to be held responsible for keeping firearms off limits, which is really the only realistic option to cut down these tragic deaths of children. Laws requiring that kind of responsibility and accountability are supported by 2/3 of Americans. Unfortunately, the gun lobby has continually and constantly and insistently and consistently opposed progress. in these areas. Their steadfast opposition has also prevented the Consumer Product Safety Commission, which has a praiseworthy track record of success in keeping children safe from hazards, ranging from lead in toys to dangerous cribs, has prevented that agency from regulating firearms, even issuing guidance about how they could be designed more safely for children. I've been coming to the floor of the United States Senate for a number of years to speak about the need for legislation to address the gun violence epidemic in this country, clearly a public health crisis. If there were a flu epidemic or other kind of contagious disease causing 30,000 deaths a year, we would have urgent and drastic action. We need to do the right thing. And stories like those reported last week of the unspeakable horror a parent feels when a child too young to understand what is happening encounters a gun and uses it, as Shaquille and Keelan and Holston Cole, a 3-year boy crackling with energy who would wake before dawn, his pastor said, he loved singing, "Jesus Loves Me," puts a gun to his head and unknowingly pulls the trigger. We can avoid that kind of tragedy. We can do better. We are better. And we must act. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.